What if the key to living the highest possible quality of life with the most life satisfaction is not about completely avoiding all stress? Our guest today is Christopher Lee Maher, a former Navy SEAL and Olympic hopeful. He discovered the detrimental effects of accumulated stress on his health despite being physically fit. He dedicated years to researching and developing true body intelligence, a comprehensive system that integrates and heals the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects of individuals. What I find fascinating about him is that he's not just sitting back on the couch preaching to live a stress free lifestyle. Christopher shows an alternative route, one where you can still be successful, work hard, and push the limits of performance. I'm not letting that have a detrimental impact on your health. In this episode, we discuss some positive versus negative stress management tools. We discuss how to balance structure and flexibility so that you can take more risks, but without the stress. We go over the role of personalization, self awareness, and vulnerability, as well as some key factors such as unconscious breath, the subconscious body, superconscious energy control, balancing the brain hemispheres, and some advice on self experimentation. If this interests you, you can go ahead and pick up his book titled Free for Life: A Navy SEAL's Path to Inner Freedom and Outer Peace. You can also reach out to him on his website, which is truebodyintelligence.com, to have a connection call with Christopher. Everything that I've mentioned so far will be in the show notes for this episode, which you can find at mindbodypeak.com/174. And I'll admit, this episode was a bit different than the usual format that we have on this podcast. But because all of us live with some degree of stress, whether it's acute or it's chronic, minor or major, seeing a different way of living and perhaps trying it on for size is something that I'm a big fan of, because that's the only way you can figure out what actually works best for you. Plus, Christopher's life and work shows that the trade off between stress and success is a false dichotomy, and you can actually perform at your best even while operating within a different stress window. All right, let's bring him in. Christopher, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yes, we will dive right in, and we'll start today with a little warm up, and that is the unusual non negotiables you've done so far today for your health, your performance, and your bioharmony.
Yeah, the non-negotiables that I have are first thing when I wake up in the morning, I go and I shower. I don't drink any water. I don't do anything. Actually, no, first thing I get up, I brush my teeth and I get in the shower because, I've been in the sleep zone, right? In this abstract state of functioning. And water is a really wonderful element to really help you get present. The other thing, which is a non-negotiable for me, is I receive a minimum of 7 to 8 healing sessions, integration sessions, coaching sessions every single week.
Wow.
Right. And the reason why that's a non-negotiable is because I work with people and I'm asking them to be the best version of themselves. And I feel if I'm requiring them to be receptive and open, it's probably a really good idea that I am acting the same way in almost every phase of my life. So uh, that's crucial. That's a non-negotiable. Another non-negotiable for me is my fasting, right? So I stop eating about 9, 10 o'clock at night. I probably start eating again somewhere between like noon and 1.
Hmm.
And so I'm comfortable with discomfort. And I always feel better, more present mentally, more present physically, more grounded emotionally when I'm in a fasting state. And then my other non-negotiable is I will stay focused on educating and informing the public at large about the work that I do for 5 years. So I do podcasting, I do Instagram reels. I'm always uploading some insight, some awareness that I have in regards to stress, personal development, health and wellness. And the last non negotiable is that I do my very best to be in the moment. So even something ridiculous like buying a flight, I typically buy my flights the night before I leave because I just got to this place of like, I would forecast, okay, I really want to be organized. And I would set out this whole plan and the plan would go to shit every time. I thought, no, I'm done with that. I don't care if it costs more money. Money can always be made, right? I prefer the comfort of going on the internet the night before. Okay, there's a flight. I'm out. See you later. So I do everything that I can to stay in the present moment. I like a quiet mind. I like grounded emotions. I like to have an abundant amount of energy. And I love to complete on the things that I start. So those are all non negotiable. So that's how I live my life.
That procrastinator inside of me loves the idea of waiting to plan my trips to the last minute, but at the same time, it makes me a little nervous thinking about how do you get your accommodations sorted out if you're booking the flight the night before and say you arrive at 1 a.m. the local time. Do you like book that the same night or do you just like cross your fingers that you're going to get in and find something good?
Yeah. So for instance, I flew to Australia to work with two people out there, which are really amazing humans. I said, look, I've never been to Australia. I don't know how they conduct their hotels. So I got a list of 5 names of hotels. As soon as I got in a taxi, I said, look, you're going to have to take me to 5 different hotels. And I walked in, I went to the front desk. Like I said, I would like to see your rooms. And I walked in, I said, nope. Went to the next one. Nope. Went to the next one. Nope. Went to the fourth one. Yep. This is where I'm staying. Because you know what? Whether it's an Airbnb or it's a VRBO or it's a hotel room, they're always hustling you with the way they take the pictures, right? It
Yeah.
always looks better than it really is. And I say, look, if I'm going to Australia one time and I'm going to be here for 10 days, I want to make sure that the view that I have, the energy in the room, like everything's perfect for me. I need to be in the room. Do I hear a bunch of noise? Can I hear the person above me? Can I hear the person beside me? Because I like solitude and I like peace and quiet. So
Mm.
when I'm working, I'm all in, like 100%. Like I dive in all the way. But when we're done work, you need to get out of my space because I need to be with me. I need to chill and ground. So if I'm going to fly somewhere, I want to make sure that it really works for me. So that's typical for me. Whenever I plan it out too much, it never works out great. It's like the other day
Yeah.
I said, I'm not the type of person who goes to the movies and I show up before the movie starts. No, I don't want to see all the pre screening for all the other movies that are coming. I just want to show up and see the movie. So I typically leave right around the time the movie's supposed to start. And I get there and I roll in. Well, I said this time, I said, you know what? I'm going to show up early to this movie. I showed up early and they had a yellow band across the front doors. You couldn't even go in. Then that was confirmation for me of like, no, you have your way of rolling. I've been to that movie theater 100 times. I've never seen a yellow band across the front of the theater. I said, okay, do you? And so me, I feel real uncomfortable with the unknown. That's more exciting to me than the known because I want to leave space and room for the universe to surprise me and give me confirmation every time, to always have faith that everything works out exactly the way that it's supposed to. And for me, it always does.
So this doesn't create a sense of stress inside of you, leaving room for that, knowing that it's possible that you won't get exactly what you would have gotten if you had planned ahead, or will you?
No, I always do. So why would I abandon my strategy if it works for me? Right. And maybe this is just like BS that I tell myself. Right. But at the end of the day, it works for me. Every time I get stressed about something where I want to be in control of the situation, it only ramps up my mind to start overthinking. And next thing I know, I've got agitation, frustration, and irritation running through my system. If I let that run for too long, I'm going to start getting angry. I'm going to start creating some really strong projections about whatever this circumstance is. And I'm not into that. I'm into like literally go with the flow of what wants to happen, the ease and grace. And the easiest way for me to do things is to let go of everything and trust that everything will work out. The worst thing and the most stressful thing in the world is when you're required to be something for someone else that you are the opposite of. That to me is stressful. So I give everyone the space to be themselves too.
So we're going to talk a lot about stress and stress resolution today. Based on what you just said, I think that would be a fun experiment for me to try because I love my structure and having my routines planned out and everything down well in advance. If someone is like that and they already have and like structure, to test this out, are there any ways that you recommend to do it on a less consequential scale or tips to make the process easier?
I mean, for me, I think if the person likes structure and that's their strategy and that's what works for them, then they should go with that. Because, I was at a wrestling event with my brother, the NCAA championships. This was in Missouri. Okay. And we're there and I can tell as we're walking, he's getting stressed thinking we're going to be missing seeing this one wrestler wrestle. Right. So in that dynamic, as I can feel his tension building, I can speed things up. Right.
Yeah.
So I kind of meet him at the halfway point because he's in close proximity to me. Now, structure works for him. Yet I know that since he hangs out with me, 6, 7 times a year, he's a little more fluid these days than he was before. Before it's like, I have to be there 15 minutes early before this starts. Without that, he was going to get severely stressed. So I don't know what he made up in his mind's eye as a little kid about the structure of time. But the way that he operates would stress me out. And the way that I operate would stress him out. So I give him enough space to be himself. So if I were giving someone some advice, the advice would be figure out what your orientation to time is. Is your orientation to time fixed? If that is, inform the people around you. Because when you inform people around you, they have an opportunity to meet you in that structure, or at least halfway. But if you don't inform someone and now, there's an event like Thanksgiving or someone's graduating from college and you have the way that you operate it, right? But they have a way that they operate. They haven't informed you that this is really important to you. They're going to be going through that event with agitation and irritation. So however you operate, it's up to you to inform those around you. Once you inform those around you, now people have a really great opportunity to meet you where you're at. And then you're going to feel loved. You're going to feel cared for. Otherwise, you're going to feel like the other person is careless. You're going to feel unloved and you're going to start doubting the relationship. Your mind's going to go, it's going to be going wild in like 600 different directions simultaneously. And eventually you're going to be pissed. One, figure out your orientation at time. Is it fixed? Is it instinctual? Is it divine? Some people have divine timing, meaning they know they show up at the right moment. They send out an invitation. Thanksgiving dinner starts at 6. This person shows at 6:14. There's a knock on the door and everyone was just getting ready to sit down. Are you that person? Or are you the person who's fluid, right? So that means you're instinctual, like you show up in the timing that actually is what works for you, right? And then other people are relative. They have a relative sense of time. So if they're in Brazil, they do what Brazilians do, right? If they're in Israel, they do what Israelis do. If they're in Boston, they do what Bostonians do. And then other people are fixed. So figure out your orientation of time and then stick to that because that's the one that stresses you out the least, and inform those around you so that their orientation of time doesn't start stressing you out. Like I had this one cat that I was training. He was a professional beach volleyball player. And I'm the type of person I like to get to the airport, like right when the door is going to close, I'm comfortable showing up like 2, 3, 4 minutes before that, right? He wants to show up 2 hours before. So he says, hey, listen, we're getting ready to go to this event in Chicago. I said, okay, what time should I be at your house? He said, well, I need to be there 2 hours before. And I thought, 2 hours before? Man, he needs to relax. So I showed up to his house when I wanted to, pulled all my bags out, parked my car, went in, saw his brother. I was like, where's such and such? It was like, he left for the airport an hour ago. And I was like, damn. Initially, I thought, oh, that prick, he just left me here. I'm his coach. I'm the one here to help him. Right. And then on my ride to the airport from the taxi, I realized, no, he was true to himself. He already informed me, and he was building self-esteem because he honored his own relationship to time. When you dishonor your own relationship to time, you reduce your self-esteem. And so you got to figure out what that is. And there is no one way. Just know what you are and then communicate to the people around you.
Do you never have any issues with like an abnormally long security line or any variable just dramatically throwing off your timing?
That's happened like once or twice. Very interesting that you asked this. I was flying from Boston back to Los Angeles, and Waze took me on this side route around because there was this high school graduation going on. And I got stuck in the middle of the high school graduation, and I'm just watching the clock, and I'm watching me be stuck here, and I'm watching the clock, and I'm looking at the people, and I'm looking at, I'm like, okay, I don't know what's going to happen. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And there was at some point I let go of like, I took in the possibility that, oh, I might miss my flight. And sure enough, I got up to the front. I saw the last person that they had let in because there's still one person hanging out. I go to the lady, I show her my thing. She goes, oh, you're 1 minute behind time. And I said, yeah, but I can see the people there. Everyone's not on the plane yet. And she's like, yeah, but I already closed the gate. And I was like, oh, okay. I think the universe has a different plan for me. All right. So then I left, went back to the front gate. Went back to the check-in counter, got a new ticket. They sent me to Detroit. I got back to LA. The person who came to pick me up, as soon as I got in the car, said, thank God your flight was delayed. And I said, why are you saying that? Because it ended up being so much better for me. I wanted to stay at this event where I was rather than come pick you up at 2:00. And I was like, cool. So I always see there's always a reason, right? And then the universe always gives me confirmation. We're in control. You're here to observe what we have going on for you.
Hmm.
Sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. If you're upset, take it up with the universe. Otherwise, stop projecting on everyone else around you. So I use every situation to find another level of freedom so I can stay outside of that stress matrix that everybody else is plugged into. Because when you're plugged into the stress matrix, man, I mean, you're just stressed by everything, right? And then you're doing everything you can to manage your stress with, guess what? Negative stress management tools or positive stress management tools. And what are people doing? Most people are using negative stress management tools around the world as opposed to positive stress management tools. Well, what's a negative stress management tool? Nicotine. What's another? Caffeine. What's another one? Alcohol. What's another one? Marijuana. Pharmaceutical drugs. Sugar. Processed, complex junk food. The other ones that people don't think about, preservatives and food colorings, because they totally stress their nervous system out. But see, what happens is, what you have to understand is when people are stressed, let's say your stress level is at a 7, then what you're going to do is you're going to choose substances that vibrate at a 7. If my stress level is at like a 2, then I'm going to choose substances that vibrate at a 2. So things that vibrate between 0 and 2 are mostly whole foods and natural, right? Stuff that vibrates at like that 7, it's been highly processed. Like look at alcohol, highly processed. Look at a cigarette, highly processed. All the chemicals that are inside, like everything becomes much more complex because your stress load makes everything about you in your life much more complex. So what I do is I simplify. How do I do that? I say, look, you're stressed. You come to see me. What are the first things you need to do? You need to get off the daily acceptable drugs because those are all negative stress management tools. How can I get you into a state of peace and calm and groundedness if you're going to leave here addicted to the daily acceptable drugs? It's an impossibility. You can afford to live in fantasy. I can't, and you're paying me And because you're paying me, I have to protect your investment. If I'm required to protect your investment, I'm required to give you information that brings you into reality and keeps you in the truth. If you want to live in fantasy, you can, but you can't live in fantasy and live in reality at the same time. And so anyone who's living in fantasy is addicted to daily acceptable drugs. Anyone who's living in fantasy is addicted to those. And so look, sure, none of your listeners want to hear that, right? But look, here's the thing. Yeah, getting off your caffeine and your nicotine and your marijuana, yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable, but I can promise you this, your mind's going to be more clear. Your energy is going to be more abundant. Your relationships are going to be more fluid and loving and present. Your body is going to be more comfortable. Your sleep is going to be more satisfying, rich and deep. And so you got to do your best to manage your day. And so you have to look at these strategies, these tools as stress management tools. You're either using positive or you're using negative. If you're using negative, then you're going to deplete your energy source every day. You're depleting your neurons. Some of those are going back to sleep. You're silencing genes. Some of those are going to sleep. You're creating more tension and stress in your body. You're creating more emotional and psychological distortion. So you're looking at reality, and reality that you're looking at isn't even reality. It's a fantasy that you're creating. And when you live in that fantasy, you want everyone to jump in that box with you. Are you courageous enough to take a step and look at how you're managing your stress? Are you a habitual liar? Is it difficult for you to be honest? Is it difficult for you to be transparent? Is it difficult for you to be vulnerable? Like, find somebody that's going to help you at least get honest and vulnerable and transparent with yourself. And by doing so, you'll no longer live in fantasy. And so now we can talk about positive stress management tools. What's a positive stress management tool? Meditation, intermittent fasting, positive stress management tool. Yoga, positive stress management tool. Any form of exercise, positive
Breath
stress
work.
management tool. Okay, breath work, positive stress management tool. Like, there's tons of positive stress management tools. And do you have to do a lot of it? No. Like, the beautiful thing for me to really impart upon your listeners is you only need to do like 10, 15 minutes. Most people think like, oh God, my day's so busy, I can't spend another hour doing something positive, right? No, you need 10, 15 minutes, right? If you in your shower and that's when you meditate, do these things while you're already doing other things. Maybe you meditate while you're doing your laundry, while you're folding your laundry. The key really is to be present. It's very difficult to be absent when you're cooking food because you could burn yourself, right? So do everything you can in your life to figure out how to get more present. Follow your breath for 5 minutes. How hard is that? Like, if 5 minutes is too much for you, do 60 seconds, right? Do 60 seconds of breath work. Do a 60-second meditation each day. Do 60 seconds of exercise. What does that mean? Like, go out and walk as fast as you can for 60 seconds. And do that every day for 30 days. I promise you, at the end of the 30 days, your esteem is going to get higher. And when your esteem gets higher, your mind is more focused on positive stress management tools. But when your esteem is lower, you're all in for the negative stress management tools.
It's so interesting that you mentioned that, because the actual impact on your body and mind of stress isn't necessarily about the absolute level of stress that you're subjected to. It's about your interpretation of the stress. So we can go through the exact same experience, and it could really stress me out of being what I considered late to the airport. And to you, it can have absolutely no negative impact on your biology.
Yeah. And that's where the key is, knowing yourself, right? And then operating as you were designed. And once you really understand yourself, it makes it very easy for you to honor your own strategies and be really clear on who it is you are. Because if I'm hanging out with you and we're on vacation and I'm operating within my timing the same way that you do, well, at some point, I'm going to feel the need to withdraw away from you to get my own sense of self again. And so,
Mm.
you know, the biggest key to whether you're managing your stress or developing yourself in any way, shape, or form is really getting clear on what works for you and asking yourself why. And you have to be okay with being different than the masses. Because how are you going to get in touch with who you are if you never do a deep investigation or even a surface based investigation? Like I was on the phone today with a group of students of mine, and one of them is designed to hermit. And then she decided to go on vacation. And on this vacation, she decided to show up with a bunch of other people and never have any time for herself. And so she didn't get to hermit. And so then she's on this vacation, but she's being driven crazy because the dynamic doesn't work for her. 1/3 of the planet is designed to move through the world to have time to hermit. If they don't have time to hermit, it's impossible for them to process their feelings, their ideas, and their experiences. And so they get clogged emotionally. And when they start getting clogged emotionally, they're going to start looking for something to manage that clog and numb them out from the circumstance that they're in. And so if you're one of these people that you're aware that you need at least a couple hours a week, if you're a mom, you got 3 kids, you're a mom, you got 4 kids, and you're never getting time to hermit by yourself, you're going to start to go insane. And so you got to talk to your husband, you got to talk to your parents, you got to talk to your siblings, go, look, can we figure out a schedule where I get like a half an hour a day to myself? And these are things about you that you have to know. And if you don't know these things, the ignorance is what makes you susceptible to managing your life with negative stress management tools. Because you're going to get on that biochemical roller coaster. You're going to have the booze at night. You're going to be convincing yourself that, oh, I need this wine. It's good for my heart. By the way, you need 100 bottles of that to be good for your heart. You're going to numb out at night, and then you're going to over amplify in the morning with your 2 or 3 cups of Joe. And then you're going to wonder why 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years from now, you feel disconnected from your life. God, was this the right decision to have kids? Was this the right person to marry? Well, no, you never took enough time to get to know yourself. And so you got to figure out what really works for you. And then you have to communicate to the sphere around you to enroll them into creating an environment that actually works for your proclivities, that works for your design, that works for your uniqueness.
Yeah. It seems like the people who live on a more fluid basis, they don't mind waiting till the last minute to make plans or to do things or to show up, have a distinct advantage because they can also plug into plans potentially easier than vice versa.
And, you know, there's 16 different types. There's 16 different types of brains. You have quad lefts, which are the most structured. And you have quad rights, which are the most fluid. And I am a quad right. Okay. And it happens to be in partnership. I've usually picked people who are quad lefts, right? So they're severely into structure. I can do that for a while. And I am stressful for them because of their inability to let go and be with the moment. Like my saying is always let the moment be the master. Everyone, child, adult, woman, man, everyone is serving a moment. And in that moment, there's an opportunity to experience more love or more anger, more excitement or more anxiety, more confidence or more fear, more righteousness or more self-righteousness. The more often you visit the anxiety, the fear, the anger, and the self-righteousness, that's informing you of how stressed you are, right? The more you're visiting the unknown with excitement, with confidence, with righteousness, and with love, everything's easy. So you either want to be on the struggle bus or you want to be on the ease and grace plan, right? And so for me, the ease and grace plan always feels more comfortable.
Hard to argue with that. If you're on the more stressed out side where you like to plan in advance, you like having big heads up, of course, it's useful to be able to adapt and be more spontaneous. And I love the idea of that. And I know that it's not inherent in my current personality. Are there things that I can do to enhance my ability to also go down that route? or to like lessen the stress I'm feeling as I'm approaching these deadlines. Because like, yes, I can do the things like we mentioned, the exercise, the breath work, all of the beneficial stress reduction techniques, but it'd be much better to quell the stress at the source and find a way of accepting the moment as it is.
Yeah, this is great. So the easiest thing a person could probably do is three things. One, you've got to get your brain balanced. So what I mean is that the left and the right hemispheres have to both be turned on electrically. Okay. And from my education, from my experience, everyone that I've ever worked with is either, and most of them are left brain dominant, and about 30% of them are right brain dominant.
Hmm.
Well, you have to reduce that dominance and have balance on both sides, right? So that you can be practical and pragmatic, and you can be
Yeah.
emotional, because
Hmm.
every experience is requiring something different. So if I'm in a situation, this situation is requiring me to be fixed, I'm okay with it. What I mean is, I know the plane is probably leaving at 6 a.m. So I have to figure out how I'm going to relate to that. So a strategy is to invite someone in to be able to teach you how to remove massive amounts of stress from your physical body. Two, how to turn on your emotional intelligence. And three, how to turn your brain back on, both hemispheres electrically. So how to turn your body on is going to be through a process called Bestersize, which is 16 different positions to reduce the lifetime accumulated stress loads that are sitting in your 16 different organs.
It's called Bestersize.
Bestersize, best form of exercise, bioenergetic self transformational sequences, best. I call it Bestersize, the best form of exercise, because you're using isometric, concentric, and eccentric contraction. So the isometric contraction does what? It allows you to gather more fibers. The concentric contraction allows you to strengthen under a load of resistance. And then the eccentric contraction allows you to lengthen under a load of resistance. So basically, you're opening, gathering more, and strengthening what you just gathered. And now you're stretching what you just gathered, okay, gathering more and strengthening that again. And so as you do this again and again and again and again and again, that creates a strong electromagnetic pulse that moves through your channels and starts feeding your organs. And now your organs become highly charged, highly magnetic, and highly intelligent. And the reason why Bestersize is so important is because it raises your physical, your mental, your emotional, your spiritual intelligence. If
Mm.
I can raise all those forms of intelligence, it means that I can manipulate my environment more easily to produce the exact result that I'm looking for. And I can now be more masterful with how I approach every single moment. Now, the other thing you need to do, you need to find somebody who will go in and remove the lifetime accumulated stress out of psoas major, psoas minor, and your iliacus. Because that's going to, one, it's going to turn on your emotional brain. And two, it's going to dump out a massive amount of fear that's sitting deep in the bowl of your pelvis. Okay. The third thing, you need to get someone who will give you an alignment through a system called alpha biotics, okay, or alpha bioenergetics, as I call it. And they will help you get your brain, both hemispheres, turned on electrically, which is going to cause an immediate reduction in the imbalance in your structure. So everyone you laid down, if you laid everyone you ever knew on a table and you put their feet together, you would see that they're between an inch to 2 inches, one leg is longer. For me and my research, every eighth of an inch is a stage of fight or flight, right? So if you're an inch out, you're 8 stages into fight or flight, right? So I already know that you're using negative stress management tools. All right. If you're 2 inches in, I know your negative stress management tools are really, really, really intense. And you've had some level of traumatic brain injury, which means you've hit your skull into something really, really hard. And so the first step is to get people out of that fight or flight response and deregulate them into a parasympathetic response. So now they're moving through the world seeing the world for what's actually going on, as opposed to viewing the world from a fear-based position. Because when you're in a parasympathetic state, you see everything as wonderful. When you're in sympathetic, high state of response, you see everything as a problem that needs a solution. Stress is valuable, stress is important, as long as it gets you to take heartfelt action to your own benefit. But if you're outside of the ability to be able to take heartfelt action to your own benefit, this stress that you're experiencing is absolutely useless. So use your stress, use your addiction as motivators or inspirers to get you to go, whoa, why do I really drink caffeine? Why am I really smoking? Why am I really hyped up on this marijuana? Why do I need 3 or 4 bowls just to be able to go to work? Okay. Why do I need to be on these pharmaceuticals? Like, you've got to be asking yourself, what's going on inside of you that you're taking this easy street? Look, everyone pays the piper at the end of the day. So if you're on those substances, well, guess what happens? You end up with a horrible death, right? Anyone who's listening to the call, do yourself a favor, go down to the local nursing home, right? And if that's what you want for your elderly life, keep doing what you're doing. But if what you want is an opportunity to ascend, when you feel like you're complete in this life and you want to be absolutely physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually present through the entirety of your life, then you've got to look at what you're putting in your body and what's in the way of you taking heartfelt action to your own benefit, because there's something in the way. And look, maybe this is just an ancestral pattern, but you got to interrupt the pattern. And as soon as you interrupt that pattern, guess what? A whole new world opens up to you, possibilities. Instead of anxiety, you got excitement. Instead of anger, frustration, agitation, irritation, you got love and care and kindness and compassion. Instead of fear, you got confidence. Okay. You got courage.
I used to think of personality, my own personality included, as something that was fixed. And then I noticed that some little shifts here and there changed who I was fundamentally. How often, when you're working with someone, do you see an anatomical cause, such as a longer leg, as a reason that their stress baseline is higher, or they're having other dysfunctions that are holding back who they want to show up as?
Every single time. The moment you get now I have a 5-day process that I take people through, right? They're seeing me twice a day. I'm getting into everything. I'm getting into their fascia. I'm getting to their muscles. I'm getting to their emotionality. I'm getting to their psychology. I'm getting to their energy. I'm getting to their moods. I'm getting into every part of them. We're just stripping things away, right? Well, and I tell them always on the first day, I go, look, just so you know, you're never going to be able to go back to the person that you were, because we're going to be creating such a successful pattern interrupt that there's no road back. So are you sure this is what you really want to do? Because you're going to be happier. You're going to be more present. You're going to be more loving. Your body's going to feel better. You're going to sleep better. Your life is going to make sense. You're going to forgive your parents. You and your husband are going to be able to move into more of a functional relationship. You're going to get along better. Like, is this what you really want? Because you got the opposite of this now. And then once we go in and we start making those shifts, then everything in the world changes, because they're different, everyone in the world treats them different. Now they're out of the martyr role, and now they're initiating and realizing they're the number one agent that's co-creating everything in their life. And now they're an empowered individual, self-realized, self-actualized, present. And then I teach them how to do it to themselves, because what do I want? I want people to be able to be motivated and have the tools to match that level of motivation, so they can go into and reinforce these deeper levels through more successful pattern interrupts. Because the more you interrupt that pattern, the more opportunities they are. You interrupt it again and again and again. Now the pattern changes. Keep interrupting again and again, and the pattern changes. So I do my best to invite someone new into my life every few months that can offer me some help. So for instance, this morning I was receiving esoteric acupuncture from an amazing doctor named Mickey Osenki. And as I was leaving my session, there was a woman sitting on the couch. And I don't usually talk to everybody that's sitting there waiting for their next appointment. But I looked at her and I said, oh, she seems interesting. And so I started up a conversation, and she happens to be a healer. She's a doctor. And she also has this attraction to more holistic methods as well. We started talking, and she was telling me the way that she works with people. And I said, oh, can you give me your number? So I'm going to call her up. I'm going to get her number. I'm going to go and have a session, because she may be able to help me interfere with another pattern that I don't even see. See, what you know about you isn't your issues. Your issues are always the things that you don't know about yourself. And that's why it's always powerful to invite people in to give you perspective on what they can see that's impossible for you to see, because we have a personality and then we have a design. And the personality is conscious, but the design is unconscious and subconscious. And your conscious mind doesn't have access to your unconscious and subconscious for a very particular reason. If it did, imagine the damage that it could do, right? So your conscious mind is like this tiny little grain of sand, but your unconscious is analogous to a 55-gallon drum of sand, and your subconscious is like all the sand on earth, and your superconscious is like all the sand in the universe.
Wait, so your subconscious is greater than your unconscious?
Yes, much, much greater. Now, the conscious mind wants you to think that it's the king, but it's not. The subconscious and the unconscious and superconscious trickle information up for the conscious mind to be able to have access to, but they have no control over those three, right? So this is why talk therapy is only so successful, right? You actually have to go into the body, you have to go into the breath, you have to go into the energy. The unconscious controls the breath, the subconscious controls the body, the instincts, the movement, the position, and the superconscious controls the circulation of energy that you're projecting out into the field around you, and what comes from source 13 levels deep. And each one of these 13 levels has varying levels of density and varying levels of information. And so we're talking about pure golden consciousness. And so how do I get these radicals levels of pure consciousness to emanate through my body, come up into my breath, and be expressed in my mind so that I can have supreme clarity and then deliver to the moment exactly what wants to be experienced at the highest level possible in a third dimensional plane of projection, reflection, manifestation, generation.
Hmm.
Now, obviously, if you're a listener, you're going to have to go back and listen to that like 5 or 6 times, because I threw a bunch of stuff in there really quickly. But I trust if you're listening to this cat's podcast, you're into growth, you're into discipline, you're into performance, and you want to grow beyond your own limitations. And I want to be able to help you get there. So the stuff that I'm giving you, it's valuable. It's been tested, tried, and true. I put in over 100,000 hours to develop this body of work.
You also, your background, you've studied under Montauk Chia and some like, traditional Chinese medicine and also Western science. So you're able to like look at this, your system through both lenses.
Yes, my mind works as a scientist. And what that means is I put things to the test. So you can give me this information, I can go in this system, but this system that we're using, it needs to be repeatable, it needs to be verifiable, and it needs to be acted out by anyone. If it requires a certain amount of intelligence or talent, then for me, it has less value. I want something that I can teach it to any person in the world, and then they can do that to anyone, and it produces the same exact result without massive amounts of education, right? I want things that are simplistic, easily implemented, that produce profound, instantaneous results. And for me, if it does that, then it's credible. And so I've been into everything, all kinds of yoga. I've tested those out, all kinds of breath work, all kinds different types of acupuncture, all types of holistic care, all different types of mind work. You name it. If it's out there, I've investigated it thoroughly through putting myself through the process to see what the outcomes were, and then asking those around me, what changes do you notice that I am unable to see?
Did you have these tools or were you using them or aware of them as a Navy SEAL?
No, what I was using as a Navy SEAL was my willfulness and my observation and my ability to investigate thoroughly, right? And so my will has always been supremely strong. And I did everything that I could to learn everything that they had to offer. And it produced a really good thing for me. What will only got me so far because what happened is I overengaged my will. And because I overengaged it, my body was never fully recovering from the amount of stress that I was putting in. And I started accumulating massive amounts of stress so that by the time I was 29, I was losing my hearing. 31, I was losing my vision. By 33, I needed a full blown hip replacement. Like I was an absolute mess because my will was overengaged. And when your will is overengaged, it's wonderful to have a strong will, but there is a cost if your will is greater than your body's ability to heal from the stress that you're putting it under. And then once I started to open my body up and reduce that lifetime accumulated stress load, and then uh, I could then take in more stress, but I could process it through my system really quickly. And so the key is realize that all humans have a high level of stress load. And what I mean by that is this through my investigation, the average human being is operating at 86% of their maximal saturation of stress, which means you only got another 14%. Once you get above in that 90 range, you're out of fight or flight and you're living in shock. And how do we know this? Go to your local city, walk around at homeless people, and you're going to see people that are living in a constant state of shock. Okay. So we're at like 86%. What happened during the pandemic, right? We saw loads of homelessness everywhere. Why? Because the stress loads went beyond what people could manage because they no longer had access to what? Their negative or positive stress management tools. And so their stress loads went high. And when the stress loads went even just a tiny bit higher, the amount of homelessness in Los Angeles increased like tenfold. So people that had homes were suddenly on the street within 30 days that never lived on the street before. The question is why? The answer is simple. If the average human is operating at 86% of their maximal saturation of stress, that's being stored in their structural tissues. What I mean is their ligaments, their tendons, their bones, their muscles, and their fascia. Okay. Their minds, their emotions, and their energy. If that's that high, then and all you need to do is get to that 90% range to be in a state of shock, which means unable to function at capacity, to be able to maintain a home, to be able to maintain a job, to be able to maintain relationships, then you're going to be diving into the street. So what do you need to do? Well, you have to take prudent action. And now that you know the information, and I promise you, everyone who's listening, you're listening. I promise you, if I brought it in my office and I put you on the floor and I started testing you out, you too would find that you're at 86% of your maximal saturation of stress. I don't care if you're a professional athlete. I don't care if you're a doctor. I don't care if you're a billionaire. You have exactly what every other single person has because you were born into this stress. This stress was passed off to you through the epigenetics into your genetics, and you were pre-programmed to have all of this stuff in your body. So the question is whether or not you have the courage to be able to reduce this. So the prudent action to take is to be able to reduce your lifetime accumulated stress load. And I've created a system that allows that to happen in a very organic fashion and then teaches you how to reduce it every day yourself. Because every day, guess what? You put in another load of stress. Why? You had to breathe the filthy air we have. You had to drink the dirty water we drink. You have to eat the compromised foods that we eat, and you have to go to work, and you have to do all the things that everybody else does. So your daily stress load is high. If you're on Earth in these very complex times and these complex stresses, your stress load is high. So what's the key? Reduce your lifetime accumulated stress load so that your daily stress hardly has any effect on you. That's the key.
One thing I was thinking about when you were describing the different stressors, both positive and negative, is that if you're using things, say coffee or nicotine, sure, they have their benefits like the polyphenols and other phytochemicals and bioactives, but you're also still adding to your stress bucket, which if we're already at 86%, 90 is not very far away. So when you go to add exercise on top of that, you're getting even closer and even closer until eventually the water starts spilling out of the bucket. And the more you add on of those things, the more recovery or stress like management techniques and activities and dedicated time you'll have to carve out to keep it under that 90%.
Yeah. And so the key really is like the three things that I told you before, was the alpha biotic alignment to be able to do ICE-centric strength, to be able to do Bestersize. Within 28 days, you're gonna reduce that number by like 20-30%,
Mm.
right? Every human needs to do, they need to get out of that initial state of fight or flight. Because once they get out of that, their brain, which is your brain's job, is to register damage. Okay. But when half of it's offline electrically, it's unable to see exactly what's going on. It's unable to govern at its capacity. What does govern mean? It's unable to fix the problems that exist inside of you. Right. So when you're doing your Bestersize, when you're getting an alignment, when you're doing your eye-centric strength, you're turning on these different systems inside of your body because your body's highly intelligent. It will go in and figure out what needs to be solved. And when you're sleeping, it will solve those problems. But if you're going to bed and you've never broken into a state of supreme balance electrically between the left and right hemisphere, your body's never fully recovering no matter how much sleep you get. You could sleep 14 hours and you're never fully recovering because your brain is unable to see electrically what it needs to govern completely.
So, are there any other major components of your system that we should discuss, or are those the big three?
Obviously, you have to do moshing, right? Like, meaning you have to get into the structural tissues. You got to get into the fascia. You have to learn how to breathe relative to your level of discomfort or pain or anxiety. These are fundamental elements. And we need to know, are you an internal processor? Or are you an external processor? Most humans are internal processors, meaning that if they're in pain, they keep that pain to themselves.
Mm.
And so an easy thing to do, which requires no money at all, right, is find a friend. You can even find a stranger at the airport and just sit down and start talking to someone and start offloading some of your worries or your confusions or your anxieties. And that alone is helpful. Like, grab a chair, sit in front of a mirror, look in your own eyes, tune into the windows of your soul and ask yourself, what is it that I really need to be doing with my life?
Mm.
How should I be spending my time? How should I be spending my energy? How should I be spending my money? What action should I take to my own benefit? Like, sit down and have 10 minutes with yourself. All this requires is time. No money is exchanged, right? Sit down with a friend and go, oh my God, I'm struggling with this. And simply by admitting it out loud that you're struggling, it invites somebody else into your experience. My God. And maybe they'll relate to you and go, wow, Susie, I've been dealing with a bit of the same thing. You too? Because a lot of times when we're suffering from something, we think we're an island onto ourselves and we're the only person in the world that's having this experience. And once you find out that, oh, you're having this too? Well, I'm having this. And I went through that for 6 months. And then I was introduced to this guy and he's been helping me a lot. Well, who's this guy? What's his number? Does he have a Facebook page? Right? Does he have an Instagram account? Can I start following him? Can I start getting a little education? Can I get that understanding? Because the truth is, once humans have a deep understanding of their circumstance, it's much easier for them to take heartfelt action to their own benefit. Unless they're in like sufferingsville and then they'll jump in without any information because they want to get out of the hell that they're in. And as soon as you get something off your chest, you already feel more at peace. Because when things are inside, they cause
Yeah.
excessive containment, and containment creates excessive heat. When you have excessive heat, heat rises. Where does it rise to? It rises to your brain. And when your brain gets hot, it gets overactive. When that gets too overactive, now your body starts producing anxiety. That anxiety increases, and then eventually you're running to find the closest negative stress management tool that you can do to interfere with this pattern of anxiety that's too overwhelming for you. And so you got to start at the basics. You've got to get into your body and reduce this lifetime accumulated stress load.
Christopher, you said a minute ago that most people are internal processors. And if you're speaking to someone else about it, to me, that seems like it would be a tool available to external processors, but not necessarily internal processors.
Correct. So that internal processor is going to have to be courageous, right? And find the one person in your life that you trust that would never share your secret and you're going to have to tell them, or you can write a letter to them and just write the letter. Maybe you never send it, but at least in writing the email, you got it off your chest. If you have a journal, hey, your internal processor, grab your pen, grab your pencil, grab some paper, and write down what you're struggling with. When you put it on paper, it comes into the material world. When it lives in your head, it's never in the material world. And as long as it lives in there, it's only becoming more complex, because the things that are inside that want to be addressed, they want to come outside. And they're going to do whatever they can to get your attention, to get you to puke this thing out in some way, shape, or form.
When I joined a men's group here in Austin, I was blown away just how therapeutic it was. I would bring up things going on in my life, my world, thinking that it was this obscure, crazy thing that no one else had even heard of. And then we'd go around the room and people would reflect on how recently they experienced the exact same thing over and over again. It was like only a few people in the entire circle that hadn't experienced it. And just without them doing or saying anything other than the fact that they understood and they experienced it, it felt like a huge weight lifted off me.
Yes, because we're here together. Like, we're here on this planet to evolve, right? The solar system is evolving, the galaxy is evolving, the universe is evolving. We're evolving, and we can either struggle through that evolution, or we can move through it with ease and grace. And so pick one of the strategies, right? Like, take one of your daily acceptable drugs and reduce your relationship to it. And if you want to plan, like, look, I wrote a book. It's called Free for Life. Go to truebodyintelligence.com. Get the audio version of the book so you can hear my voice, and I can give you the energetic transmission that will help you build enough courage inside of yourself to take a risk. Like, it was a risk for you to join a men's group, right? It's a risk to go to the gym. It's a risk to go see the chiropractor, right? It's a risk to run a marathon. Like, all of it's a risk. But on the other side of that risk is the opportunity for reward. And so if you're listening to the call and you're riskless, in the places where you're risky and you're taking reward, right? You're going for the gold. Who cares? Man, I might be tired for 5 days without this caffeine. I might get a headache. Great. Endure the headache, right? Suffer through the headache. And then 5 days later, feel how much better you are when you wake up in the morning. Like, if you're feeling exhausted and your husband snores all through the night, take a risk, grab your pillow, go lay on the couch and sleep. Get a good night's rest. Because a lot of people, that's all they really need. They need a really solid night rest, and then they're willing to take a risk. But most people, their energy is so reduced, it's impossible for them to take a risk because they don't have enough energy to take action on a benefit. So if you sleep terrible next to your partner, go sleep on the couch. If they're a snorer and they've kept you up every night for the last 10 years, sleep with them on the weekends, but sleep on your own during the week. So you have your energy, right? Because when you have your energy, everything's possible. But when your energy is really reduced, it makes it very difficult to dig up the courage to take a risk on some part of your life where you know you have an inner deficiency or an insecurity. It's very difficult to do so.
Making change and breaking disserving habits and replacing those with something better takes energy. It takes willpower initially. And if you're already physically not doing as well, that'll spill over to your mental, your emotional, your spiritual life. And it just becomes like an uphill battle. But if you just fix any of those components, each of those components that you work on and improve carries over into the others. And it's the whole idea of a rising tide lifting all boats.
Mm. There you go. And so the opposite is also true, right? Like, reverse engineer everything he said. And you're going to get to the place of going like, oh, so if I stay the way that I am, I'll still be under the belief that life happens to me. If you're in Strugglesville, and look, everyone you know is in Strugglesville somewhere. The most important thing is, forget about them. The most important thing is that you look at the area where you're struggling the most and you get honest. If you can be honest with yourself, if you can simply say, I'm a failure at this. Now you open the door to go, oh, wow, I'm being honest. I'm failing at this. Well, guess what it takes in order to be successful? You have to fail again and again and again and again. Failure is the greatest aspect of success. And when we're willing to admit that we're failures, whether that's in your communication, whether you're a failure in your honesty, whether you're a failure in your ambition, whether you're a failure in your consistency, whether you're a failure in your power, whether you're a failure in your humor, like whatever it is, get after it. Life is short. It goes by really fast. Yet when you make these incremental changes, everything in your life slows down. And now you get to appreciate the beautiful, amazing human being that you were always designed to be. And all it takes is a little bit of courage. So whatever you got to do to get a good night's sleep, go get it.
Christopher, this has been a fascinating conversation for me because for most of my life, actually until right now, I've seen stress as something that I'm working to become resilient against. I want to build up all these habits and tools and practices so that it doesn't affect me the way it has throughout my life. But then from this conversation, I'm realizing that that's one approach, but it's really putting a band aid over a larger issue. And instead, changing the way I perceive and view stress. The same moment to you isn't stressful as it would be to me going to the airport at the last minute, for example. So these exercises and tools and tips you've shared so far have been really helpful. And if people want to work with you, to connect with you, how do they go about that?
The easiest way is go to truebodyintelligence.com. As soon as you go there, my face is going to come up on the cover of my book, like blam. It's going to be sitting right in front of you. You know what? Order the book. Take a risk. As soon as you read the book and you complete on that, you can email me. You'll email my assistant at support@truebodyintelligence.com, and she will put us on a connection call. And the connection call is free. I assume you care enough about yourself to even take the time to listen to this podcast. If you need to listen to this 10 times, do it until you're ready to take action. Sometimes you have to beat down the old pattern to open up the tiniest little bit of space so you can squeeze through there and be able to take a risk. And when you take that risk, I will be there for you to help you. But you have to have a little bit of a vested interest. And the way you gain vested interest is by ordering the book and being invested in listening or reading. And the more vested you are in your life, the more life is vested in you getting what it is you really want to experience.
I have a couple more questions for you. If there was a worldwide burning of the books and all knowledge was lost, but you get to save the works of three teachers that have informed your personal life or your work or anything, who would you choose and why?
I would choose Montauk Chia, first off, because he wrote 52 books. So by choosing him, I know we have a vast amount of knowledge, right? And the reason I would choose him is because, Montauk and I have a very similar perspective is that we want to reach people and teach them how to take care of themselves, but we also want to be the embodiment of the product that we're teaching. And so I value congruence. Another person that I would choose is a book called The Way of the Peaceful Warrior by a guy named Dan Millman. And that book was one of the first books that kind of like turned on a few lights for me. And I was like, as I was reading it, I was like, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. And I've read the book several times. It was a place that got me started on my journey. So I would want to be able to have access to that book. Okay. Cause that was the beginning for me. The other book that I would want to be here for all time would be my book.
Fair.
And no, I'm not a narcissist. It's because I want to serve other people powerfully. And I know the work that I put together is profound. And I know it's a message done in a way that will get people to go, I finally get it.
Mm.
I need to take action.
Perfect. And then finally, what is one thing that the True Body Intelligence tribe does not know about you?
I think what they don't know about me is how much I avoid doing something that I love supremely, which is playing the piano.
Hmm. Awesome. All right. Then the last one, if people have made it this far, do you have any parting words of wisdom for them?
Well, if you made it this far, then my parting word of wisdom is listen again, because I use language that would be new to you. And so in order to grok a concept, a healthy brain needs to hear things 9 to 32 times. And that's assuming you have a healthy brain and you've never been addicted to the daily acceptable drugs. Listen to you and I again, and listen until you feel like, okay, I'm ready to take some action. Like if you listen to this call and you understand every aspect of what I'm saying, then it's time to take action.
Christopher, this has been a really fun recording podcast with you. And I thank you a ton for joining me and sharing your life's work so far and some of your wisdom. And thank all of you for tuning in. And it's one thing to take this in as knowledge, but as Christopher said, go out there and try implementing some of the things you've learned and let us know on social media how that goes. I hope that this has been helpful for you. If you enjoyed it, subscribe and hit the thumbs up. I love knowing who's in the 1% committed to reaching their full potential. Comment 1% below so that I know who you are. For all the resources and links, meet me on my website at mindbodypeak.com. I appreciate you and look forward to connecting with you. As a reminder, the information depicted in this video is for information purposes only. Please consult your primary healthcare professional before making